The screen went black, no static, no sound, just the memory of that final click stretching into silence, and the words burned into your mind. Too late. The broadcast was over, but its weight lingered. The Department of Wildlife's emergency signal, the hijacked warnings, the survival rules buried under static. You remember the footsteps closing in, the whisper at the door, and the voice that broke through to tell you not to open it. You didn't see what was outside. You didn't have to. If you've been following this investigation, make sure you subscribe to the Midnight Codex so you don't miss what's coming next. Hit the like button if this transmission got under your skin, and leave a comment. What do you think really hijacked the signal? Because this story isn't finished, not even close. The black screen flickers once, twice, before an entirely new feed cuts in. No seal, no map this time. Just a single security camera aimed down a narrow hallway, the kind with too many doors and no windows. The audio's quiet at first, nothing but the faint hum of fluorescent lights. Then, somewhere down the hall, a door creaks open. The hallway feed holds steady, its fixed lens capturing the empty corridor in washed-out grayscale. The image wavers faintly, just enough to make the fluorescent lights overhead seem to hum louder. The floor tiles gleam in uneven patches, reflecting the glow like thin strips of ice. For a moment, nothing moves. The hum of the lights is joined by a faint electric buzz, the kind of ambient noise you only notice when you're alone in a place built for too many people. Shadows pool at the far end of the hall, darker than they should be, bending against the edges of the camera's vision. Then, a slight tremor passes through the picture. Not a glitch, something physical, like the camera's mount being disturbed. The view tilts a fraction, straightens, then jitters again. The feed cuts. When it returns, the image is no longer fixed. It jerks in sharp motions, swaying side to side with every footstep. The muted click of boots against tile is picked up by the mic, followed by the heavy, uneven rhythm of breathing. The lens is narrower now, the lighting dimmer, the grain of handheld footage crawling across every frame. Operator Jensen's voice enters, low and measured at first, though the breathlessness behind it betrays how fast he's been moving. Jensen, inside the target facility. 0 contact from Bravo or Delta teams. He pauses, swallowing hard. Picked up the last signal from the broadcast, thought it was a location ping. Turns out it was something else. He doesn't elaborate. The camera tilts slightly downward as he moves forward, the beam from his tactical light sweeping across the walls. The light's edge catches on dust motes drifting lazily in the air, each one spinning slowly before disappearing into the darkness. "It's too quiet," Jensen mutters, into the mic, voice dropping to a near whisper. No chatter on the radio, no static, no signal noise, just nothing. Haven't heard another voice since I came in. The camera pans across door after door, each closed, each identical. Frosted windows break up the walls in regular intervals, their opaque glass reflecting Jensen's light back at him in dull gray patches. Occasionally, he passes an open doorway, and the camera peeks in, only to find the rooms empty, chairs pushed neatly under desks, computer monitors black. A sudden thunk echoes from somewhere deeper down the hall. Jensen freezes mid-step, the camera swaying slightly as his breath grows louder in the mic. He doesn't speak this time, only shifts his grip on the camera until the view steadies on the far end of the hallway. Nothing moves. For a long moment, the only sound is the faint, steady beat of Jensen's breathing, slow but heavy, pulling through his nose, exhaling in low bursts. Somewhere behind it, if you listen closely, there's another sound entirely, the faint rush of blood in his ears, picked up by the mic like a soft static. Then, without warning, a door at the very end of the hall stirs. It doesn't swing wide. It moves just enough to break the seal, just enough for a sliver of darkness to appear between it and the frame. The gap seems to drink in the light from the hallway, leaving the edges of the door faintly haloed. Jensen exhales, the sound catching at the end. "Copy," he whispers to no one in particular, his voice pitched low enough that it might not even have been meant for the recording. The camera steadies on the open door as he starts forward. Each step is careful, the kind you take when you're trying to keep noise down but still move quickly. The beam of his light stays trained on that gap, widening slightly as he closes the distance. The walls seem to narrow with every step, the frame growing tighter, like the hallway itself is pulling him toward that door. Halfway there, his breathing changes, still controlled, but heavier now, deeper. The sound of his heartbeat begins to thud faintly in the mic, just audible beneath the tread of his boots. The air changes too. You can't see it, but you can feel it in the way Jensen's light seems to diffuse more, like the particles in the air are denser here. His breath sounds wetter, pulling in through the mask of his gear with a faint rasp. He stops 3 steps from the door. The camera lingers, the open gap framed dead center. Jensen leans slightly to the left, just enough to angle the lens toward the dark space beyond, but not enough to cross the threshold. Hallway clear. Doors ajar, he mutters into the mic, his words shaky. No sound inside, no movement. Then, something changes in the darkness of the room. It's not a movement, it's the absence of movement, a subtle shift in the way the shadows fall. Jensen's breath hitches audibly, and for a second the camera dips, catching a glimpse of his gloved fingers tightening on the grip. He takes one more step forward. The door creaks open another inch, slow enough that the sound is almost lost under the mic's hum. The beam of his flashlight cuts deeper into the room, catching the corner of a desk, the edge of a chair, and nothing else. Jensen exhales again, this time longer, the kind of release that sounds more like bracing than relief. He tilts the camera back toward the hallway behind him, scanning for movement. The beam washes over the same sterile walls and frosted glass, and in that sweep, the light catches for just an instant on something reflective far back the way he came. He doesn't notice. Turning back to the door, Jensen nudges it with his foot, the frame tilting slightly as the handheld camera shifts. The creak is louder this time, echoing unnaturally in the empty hall. The gap yawns wider, revealing more of the unlit room beyond. "Going in," he says quietly, though his voice is tight, almost clipped. He steps across the threshold. The camera follows, the hallway behind him swallowed instantly in black as the door swings partway shut on its own. The room ahead is smaller than it seemed from the hall, the walls closing in around the narrow beam of his light. A faint layer of dust coats the floor, swirling lazily where his boots disturb it. Jensen takes a slow turn, the camera panning with him. "Room is," he begins, then stops. Somewhere in the dark, deep enough to be felt rather than heard, there's a sound. It's not loud, not yet, but it's enough to still him completely. A slow, deliberate inhale. And then, silence. The slow, deliberate inhale fades back into the room's stale air, and Jensen doesn't move at first. The handheld frame trembles in that small, involuntary way that means his arms are locked, muscles burning. Dust drifts through the flashlight beam like ash. When he finally speaks, his voice is half a whisper, half a confession that's been waiting for years. "I was 9, he says, the words roughened by the mask and the dryness in his throat. Summer, no AC, window cracked for air. He takes a step, the camera swinging past a bulletin board strewn with curled papers and a calendar that stopped months ago. I couldn't sleep. It was outside. He doesn't say what it is. He doesn't need to. The light skims across a desk, a fallen chair, a coffee mug ringed with the pale outline of dried residue. It never knocked. It never scratched. It just stood there. The beam dips to the floor, tracing scuffed linoleum, then rises toward the far wall. I remember thinking, it wasn't supposed to be that tall. He turns, and the camera snags on the edge of a file cabinet, metal rasping softly as his gear brushes it. The sound ricochets through the room like a tiny alarm bell, then disappears into the hush. My window had that cheap screen with a tear in. The corner, he continues. I used to poke pencils through it, make little holes like constellations. That night the holes looked like eyes, except the eyes were lower, closer, breathing. Silence fills the last word, stretches, and then the mic picks up a faint distant scrape, metal on metal, so far away it's almost imaginary. Jensen's breathing tightens. The camera tilts toward the doorway he came through. The hall beyond is just a thick band of black pressed against the half-closed door. I tried to tell my mom, he says, the next morning, but I didn't have the right words. I said the night was looking at me. He laughs once without humor. She said I had a strong imagination. I learned not to talk about it. He moves toward a second door at the back of the room, the flashlight splaying weak light across a narrow observation window that shows only darkness beyond. Second time was at 12, he says, almost conversational, like he's checking items off a list he wishes didn't exist. Camp. We had those mesh tents, see-through if you were on the inside with a flashlight. I turned mine off, and the world went black. And then it wasn't. Something leaned against the fabric and the stars disappeared. His breathing slows, remembering it seems to calm him and terrify him at once. It pressed right here. He taps the center of his chest plate with a gloved knuckle. The camera shivers with the motion. Right through the dark, he pushes the second door open with the heel of his boot. Hinges complain, a long, shallow groan. The space beyond is a narrow corridor, more utility than office, with cable trays snaking along the ceiling and a long smear on the wall at hip height, the color of old rust. The camera catches it, lingers a breath too long. It never left me, Jensen says, low and flat. It never will. He advances down the secondary corridor, and the audio blooms with small sounds, the faint flecks of leather, the hush of fabric over armor, the quiet stick snap of grit underfoot. Somewhere deeper, left or right, it's impossible to tell. Another scrape answers, almost polite. He stops, points the light along the cable tray. Mouse droppings, webs, a tag on a wire bundle that reads, "Emergency feed, do not disconnect." I tried to become the kind of man who would make it leave, he says. Join up, train hard, learn the angles, call the shots. Hunt it, and you don't have to run from it. That's what I thought. The corridor elbows left. He takes it. The lens jitters, refocuses, catches an exit sign with no power glowing through it. Just dead plastic. 19, barracks window, he says. 24, rearview mirror on a 2-lane blacktop, fog at 3 a.m. He breathes in, breathes out, voice softening as if he's afraid of waking something. 31, hospital parking lot. My wife was inside. I was out getting air. It stood beside the sodium lamp and the light didn't touch it. I don't think the light wanted to. He slows. The corridor opens into a storage bay, pallets half wrapped in plastic, a forklift abandoned with its tines buried in a stack of crates like an animal freezing mid-bite. Jensen keeps the camera tight, sweeping slowly. The eyes are always the same, he says. White, not reflecting, not glowing, just present, like they came first and the rest of it decided to happen around them. He steps around a fallen sign. The camera glances down long enough to read the words, "Facility quiet hours, 2000 to 0600. Hunched, he says, the memory leaking into his tone. Arms too long. Movement wrong in the joints, like it's using your idea of walking, but it doesn't believe in it. He swallows. The breathing is the worst part. Not loud, not animal, not human either. It's measured, like counting, like testing to see if you'll breathe with it. The storage bay has 2 doors. One is chained shut, a padlock snapped through so cleanly it looks manufactured that way. The other stands a fraction ajar. As the camera pans past, there's a murmur. No words, only the rounded edge of sound, like breath rolling over metal. Jensen flinches and holds, every joint going still. The mic picks up his heartbeat again, that low subterranean thud. It picked me, he says, so quietly the recorder almost loses it. Maybe I looked back too long. Maybe that's all it takes. He sets a boot to the ajar door, opens it just enough to angle the camera into the seam. Thought joining the task force would turn it into something I could measure. Reports, sightings, teeth marks, radiuses. He huffs. We love our radii. The seam reveals a maintenance stairwell spiraling down. The light drops into it and seems to vanish a few steps below, sheer black absorbing it. The handrail carries scratches, long, shallow, as if gifted gently by someone not trying to hurry. Jensen aims the camera over the rail, and in the depth, in that compounded dark, the mic catches it again. The scrape, distant, delicate, like a fingertip drawing circles on a pan of steel. He begins to descend. Every step is a metronome. Heel, toe, soft rubber whispering against concrete. When the broadcast hit, he says, the words falling in time with his movement, I thought it was a flare, not a trap. Coordinates taste like salvation if you've been chasing a ghost. The light paints the inner wall, flakes of paint catching and letting go. But ghosts don't lay flares, they lay paths. The first landing is strewn with a drift of paperwork, a spill of incident forms and chain of custody receipts, all bearing the same red stamp. Hold for review. He kicks a sheet aside gently and the camera catches a black fingerprint shining in the beam, long, narrow, or maybe it's a smear. It never left me, he repeats, not for emphasis, but like a truth he must keep alive, by speaking it. It never will. He takes the second flight. The air cools. The mic hears tiny ticks in the pipes behind the wall, contraction and expansion like old teeth chattering. The scrape comes again, right at the edge of audibility, and with it, a thread-thin click, one, then another, then a third, and then nothing, like someone politely knocking on an enormous door very far away. Jensen stops, and in stopping, he lets his shoulders drop just enough for the camera to sag. The frame tilts, catching the curved line of the stairwell like a rib cage. Sometimes, he says, I think it wants me to talk. It draws out the air so I'll fill it, and when I do, it knows where I am. He lifts the camera again, squares the frame, breathes through his nose, and moves on. You hear operators tell themselves they're different, they're harder. I told myself that too. I thought if I carried the right kit and learned the right words, I could rename the thing that followed me. Target, entity, subject. But it doesn't care what you call it. The stair finishes in a short service corridor lit by a single emergency fixture stuttering on dying battery. The light fails, returns, fails again, the room blinking with it like a slow, arrhythmic heart. The camera rides the pulses, micro-jitters skittering through the image. In one of those blinks, there's a hint of a shape at the next corner, nothing more than a contrast seam where black meets black. But the brain insists on calling it a shoulder. When the light returns, the corner is empty. Someone once asked me if I ever saw its mouth, Jensen says, as if the remembered conversation has arrived in his hands, along with the tremor. I said no. I said I didn't think it needed one. He sniffs, clears the back of his throat without taking his gaze off the corridor ahead. I keep thinking maybe it breathes through the space it takes up. Maybe it only has to live where you're looking. He passes a rack of tools. A wrench lies on the floor, its open jaws directed toward the wall. On the concrete next to it, 3 parallel scratches, as neat and evenly spaced as scoring marks. The camera pauses long enough for the viewer to count, 1, 2, 3, before he moves on. I used to count, he admits, when I was a kid. I thought if I made numbers out of it, made a pattern, it would stop being bigger than me. The corridor hums a little louder. The emergency light sinks toward another failure. What I didn't understand is that some patterns aren't there to be solved. They're there to teach you how to wait. He reaches the next door and rests his palm against it. The mic picks up the softness of his glove, skidding almost noiselessly across paint. He listens. The camera listens with him, way out there, through concrete, through pipe. Something answers with a tender, exploratory scrape. The sound is not threatening, it is curious. And that is worse. Jensen leans close to the mic without meaning to. If you're hearing this, he says, breath feathering the grill, understand. I didn't come to find it for you. I came because I'm tired of the window. He turns the handle. The metal tongues withdraw with a hollow clack. I am tired of the door. He pulls. The door opens on darkness. No room glow, no standby LEDs, no exit sign halo, just depth. His light plunges and vanishes. He aims the camera into the black and draws one more breath. "It never left me," he repeats, softer than before, steady now, almost calm. "It never will." From somewhere far inside the dark, something answers with the faintest skittering, metal being touched in two places at once, then a tiny, deliberate tack against something hollow. The camera quivers once in his hands, a tremor that could be fear or resolve. Jensen steps through. The door eases shut behind him with the gentlest sigh, sealing the confession inside the place it always lived, just past the glass, just inside the frame, one breath away. The door whispered closed behind Jensen with a sound like breath leaving a body. For a long moment, he just stood there in the dark. No footsteps, no sound, just the gentle whir of the camera and his own slow, measured breathing. The emergency light in the corridor behind him had finally failed, leaving this section of the facility wrapped in pitch. Only the flashlight remained, a thin blade of illumination cutting forward, shaky in his gloved hand. The room he entered was larger than the others. Low industrial ceilings. Rows of metal desks lined both walls, their surfaces cluttered with abandoned equipment, clipboards with curling corners, empty syringe cases, cracked monitors, and paper trays still filled with printed forms. The air had that sterile weight, a mixture of bleach and dust, long undisturbed. Jensen panned the flashlight slowly across the room. The beam caught on a stack of faded file boxes collapsed in a corner. Above them, on the wall, a long gouge ran from near the ceiling down to eye level, 3 deep scratches like something had tried to hold on while sliding down. He stepped forward. The crunch of debris beneath his boots was loud now, almost offensive in the silence. As he passed each workstation, the camera picked up more signs of sudden abandonment. A metal stool tipped on its side, a half-drunk bottle of water with sediment clinging to the bottom, a chair that had rolled a few inches away from its desk, as if someone had stood up too fast. Jensen's voice came through the mic, hushed and tight. "Sector C, still no visuals on target, traces of panic movement, no signs of life." He turned to his left. A storage cabinet stood ajar, its doors cracked wide enough for the flashlight to catch glimmers off glass vials and labeled jars. On the inside of one door, a long smear of brown, dry, flaked at the edges, stretched from the middle hinge down toward the floor. His radio crackled suddenly. A hiss. No voice. Just a burst of static that carried something behind it. A syllable, a breath, a glitch of meaning. He grabbed the shoulder mic and keyed it. "Bravo, this is Jensen. Repeat, do you copy?" Nothing. "Delta Team, come in." The radio buzzed again, softer. Then silence. He let go of the mic. The sound of his breathing returned, heavier now, as if the act of speaking had taken something from him. He pressed forward into the next room. The transition was seamless, no door between, just a narrowing of the hall that opened again into a wide clinical chamber. This one bore signs of direct conflict. A crash cart had been overturned, its drawers spilled open, scattering IV tubes, gauze rolls, syringes across the floor like bones from a shattered skeleton. One fluorescent light flickered in a rapid stutter above a surgical table bolted to the center of the room. The camera dipped, focused on the legs of the table, bent. One side slanted down as if something heavy had thrown itself onto it. Jensen moved slower now. Every few seconds he paused, flashlight tilted up to scan the walls. More scratches, some shallow, some deep, all following a similar arc. They weren't random. They told a story. Something moved fast, something with claws, something tall enough to drag those claws across 6 feet of wall in one motion. He spoke again, not into the mic, just aloud, to the camera. "These rooms, they all loop. I keep seeing the same floor pattern." A moment passed. Not identical, but close, like someone tried to copy the space from memory. The flashlight passed over a wall chart, "Emergency evacuation routes," written in faded red. Jensen leaned in. His finger tapped a section labeled South Access Hall. "This route doesn't make sense," he said quietly. "I've walked 3 left turns and ended up further right. The facility's been stretched." He pulled away from the chart. The moment he stepped back, a sound echoed behind him, a soft clatter, like something dropping onto metal. He spun, light jerking across the room. Nothing. But the camera caught it. In the far corner, a stool that hadn't been there before. It was facing the wrong direction. Jensen didn't speak. He approached slowly, boots dragging now, unwilling to make noise. The camera remained fixed on the stool, then dropped briefly to the floor behind it. 3 drag marks in the dust, parallel, uniform, the kind of tracks made by long fingers. He backed away, slowly. The radio crackled again, this time no static, just a single phrase. "Jensen," whispered. The voice was neither male nor female. It had no urgency, no fear, just presence. Jensen froze. His finger hovered over the transmit button but didn't press. The radio stayed silent. He turned and headed back toward the hall, the flashlight beam trembling. The air felt heavier now, the silence not just a lack of sound but a pressure. A shape behind his ears. As he moved past the gouged wall again, the scratches seemed deeper, as if they'd grown in the time he'd been away. He didn't comment. Instead, he whispered to himself, too softly for the mic to catch most of it. Only fragments came through. A loop, not random, meant to keep me moving. He reached a door marked LAB4 and pushed it open. The hinges shrieked. Inside, light from a broken ceiling panel poured down like fog, turning the dust into a shimmering haze. Equipment was smashed against the walls, a microscope split down the center, monitors gutted, wires pulled like veins. On the far wall, someone had scrawled something in red ink, or maybe not ink at all. "It doesn't live here. It waits." The phrase repeated 3 times, each more frantic, the final line overlapping itself in wild strokes. Jensen didn't speak. He just stared. Then he turned the camera slightly, and for just a second, the lens caught movement at the edge of the door, a shadow pulling away from the frame. But when he turned to look, nothing was there. The camera wavers in Jensen's hand, the light swinging wildly as he stumbles forward. His breath is ragged now, quick gasps leaking through his mask, barely muffling the panic rising in his chest. Every footstep is a deliberate thing, heavy, cautious, almost too slow, as if his body knows better than to rush into the unknown. Then, in the distance, something moves. It's there, but gone before the light can fully catch it, a flicker of motion so quick it could have been a trick of the eyes. Jensen freezes, the light narrowing at the far end of the corridor, the beam trembling in his grip. He forces himself to breathe. "It's here," he mutters, barely audible, more to himself than anyone else. The camera shifts slightly, his fingers tight against the lens. Another step, and this time, the shadow moves again. He swears it does, the shape darting just out of sight. Click. A soft sound from far down the hall. The camera shifts again, jittering as Jensen focuses the beam on the edges of the dark hallway. His pulse echoes louder than the faint noise in the distance. Click. Another tap. It's not from the floor. Number. It's coming from the walls. Jensen's heart picks up speed. He moves closer to the end of the hall, hand shaking so violently the flashlight flickers, catching only the edge of the hallway now. The camera is angled just slightly too high, and the movement is jerky. Yet, every sound, every movement, every flicker on screen only tightens the knot in his gut. He knows what's out there. He knows what he's chasing. Click. The light catches it this time, or at least part of it. A shadow, a figure, just enough to register, too fast to identify. But the sudden, unexplainable movement makes him stop dead. His eyes scan frantically, darting between the walls and doors. But nothing is there. Nothing physical. Just the deep, unnerving sensation that something else is watching him, that whatever is out there is letting him see just enough before pulling back again. "It knows," Jensen breathes out, voice shaking. The camera rattles with the words, his breath falling heavier now, each inhale louder. "It's playing with me." His voice cracks with a sense of realization and fear, each word like a confession he's been too afraid to say until now. The camera jerks as he moves forward. The light flickers again, a few steps at a time, casting a line of dim illumination down the otherwise suffocating blackness. Every movement feels deliberate, the quiet oppressive, as if the very air is holding its breath alongside him. And then, a door. It creaks, its hinges groaning under the weight of silence. The flashlight dances across its frame, catching a thin sliver of light beneath the cracked door. Jensen stares at it for a moment, but his feet are already moving before he can stop himself. The door is there, waiting, and he can't help but inch closer. Click. The sound reverberates again. This time, it's not distant. It's not vague. It's just ahead. In front of him, near. His breath quickens, chest tightening with each echo. Jensen lifts the camera slowly, his gloved fingers shaking as he grips the edge of the lens. The static from his radio buzzes faintly behind his shoulder, offering no comfort, only a reminder that he's not alone here. Not in this place. Not with whatever has been stalking him since the first day he set foot on this cursed mission. His eyes flick from the door to the hall and back again, almost like he's trying to convince himself it's safe. Another click. But this time, it's accompanied by something else. A scrape. It's low at first, soft. A faint drag across the floor. It's a sound Jensen knows all too well, the eerie, unnatural movement of claws over concrete, the sound of something not meant to move on two legs. The camera shifts wildly, almost capturing the slithering motion at the corner of his eye. It's gone before it even has a chance to become real. Jensen's voice catches in his throat. He moves again, too quickly this time, stumbling as he fumbles for the door handle. His pulse is deafening, pounding in his ears, drowning out every other sound as he braces himself for whatever might be behind it. He turns the handle, but before the door opens fully, it slams shut. The force of the blow sends a shock through the camera, throwing it off-center. The beam flickers, spinning in chaotic arcs as Jensen stumbles back. The camera catches the briefest glimpse of his face in the blur, eyes wide with shock, mouth parting to speak. But no words come. The door had been waiting for him. Now it's as though it's been closed off again, locked away, forcing him back into the corridor where the shadow waits, where the scraping sound grows louder and louder with every passing second. I can't get out, Jensen mutters, his words almost unintelligible now. He takes another step back, but the static on his radio surges violently, drowning out whatever he might have said next. The light shakes wildly. The air feels thick with something else now, something that hasn't yet shown itself, but is coming closer. Click. The sound cuts through the chaos, louder now. The camera spins again, this time catching only the edge of the room. The light bounces off something at the far end. A shadow. Just a shadow, but it's enough. I need to. Jensen's voice falters again, his chest heaving with each breath. I need to leave. He turns away, the camera focusing on the narrow strip of hallway leading behind him. As he moves, the camera catches the reflection of something else. A pale, stretched figure standing motionless in the dark. The eyes glow faintly, too bright, too wrong. Then, nothing. The camera jerks again, the feed cutting out for a moment, only to return, frozen for just a second longer. The last image is the door, completely shut. The figure in the dark is gone. The flashlight sputters in Jensen's grip, throwing fractured light across the hallway. The beam shakes in small, erratic arcs, revealing slices of the walls, deep gouges etched into the plaster, peeling paint curling at the edges. Okay, just breathe, Jensen mutters into the mic, voice shaky. His breath fogs the lens for a moment before he wipes it away with the back of his glove. Somewhere beyond the edge of the light, there's a sound. Not a scrape this time. Not exactly. More like something heavy being dragged across concrete. Jensen freezes. His free hand tightens against his vest. That's closer. It's closer now. His voice cracks on the last word. The camera glitches. A sudden vertical tear in the feed, the colors warping, and in that flicker, for less than a second, two pale eyes blink from the darkness. Shit! Jensen stumbles back, the beam darting wildly across the empty stretch ahead. I saw it. I saw it. Silence. Then, drag. The sound is deliberate, almost rhythmic, like whatever is making it doesn't care if he hears. The noise grows louder, filling the narrow hallway until it's impossible to tell where it's coming from. Jensen's breathing quickens. It's here with me. He swallows audibly, the sound harsh in the recording. God, I thought maybe it wouldn't. His voice trails off. It always finds a way back. The flashlight flickers again and the distortion worsens. The image bends in the corners, shapes stretching unnaturally. In the warped frame, something moves at the far end. Tall, too thin, its head cocked to one side. Jensen doesn't move. The light trembles on the figure. It's gone in the next blink. The dragging stops. A low click echoes down the hallway. Then another. Then another. Jensen shudders. 3. Always 3. The camera tilts slightly as his knees bend, almost like his body is preparing to run, but he doesn't. Not yet. His breath comes in shallow bursts, every muscle wound tight. The hallway feels smaller now, the walls closer. The shadows on either side deepen, shapes shifting within them that vanish when the beam touches. Drag. Click. Drag. Click. It's closer. Much closer. Jensen whispers, "It's right there." His voice drops to almost nothing, as though even the sound of him breathing might trigger it. He presses back against the wall, the metal plate behind him cold through his vest. The camera catches movement, not from ahead but above. The beam tilts up just in time to catch the brief outline of something moving along the ceiling. Hands and feet placed wrong, bending wrong. Jensen gasps sharply, nearly dropping the light. The sound of it scuttling overhead sends vibrations through the wall at his back. Dust drifts down around him. Then, silence again. The kind of silence that means it's waiting. Jensen swallows, his Adam's apple bobbing in the frame. If I move, it moves. He glances toward the hallway junction just a few meters away. I can make it. I just have to... The dragging starts again. This time, it's right behind him. He spins, but there's nothing. The distortion spikes, the frame bending inward until the image almost collapses into black. In that black, just for a breath, 2 white eyes stare directly into the lens. Jensen jerks back, light swinging violently. No, I'm not. He cuts himself off, sucking in a sharp breath. The dragging sound changes, becoming footsteps, uneven, slow. He mutters, I need to move. The light flickers once more, and when it steadies, the end of the hall's empty again. Jensen's breathing turns into small, sharp gasps. His stance shifts forward, knees bent like he's about to sprint. The dragging stops. Click, click, click. Jensen bolts toward the camera's left, the frame whipping into blur, and the feed tears in static as the sound of pursuit erupts behind him. Jensen's breathing fills the mic, ragged, uneven, almost swallowing the ambient static in the background. The flashlight flickers in his grip, the camera swaying violently as he pivots in place. Okay, He swallows hard, the sound loud in the recording. I just need to move. Keep moving. The beam of light skims over the hallway, trembling with each step. His boots scrape against the floor, and somewhere far down the corridor, something echoes the sound, just half a beat too late. Jensen freezes. That's not me, he mutters, voice shaking. Another breath, sharp this time, the kind you take when you're forcing yourself not to panic. He turns the camera toward a side passage, empty. The lens catches the dust floating in the beam, disturbed by some unseen movement. Jensen licks his lips, his voice cracking. It's following. It's still following. A sudden metallic clink in the dark makes him flinch. Shit. His whisper breaks, the word almost clipped by a gasp. It's close, closer than before. The camera jerks as he backs up, the beam catching on peeling paint and deep gouges in the wall. Claw marks, fresh, curling into the plaster like they'd been dragged there only moments ago. His voice drops to a whisper, the kind you use when you don't want the thing you're talking about to hear you. I've seen those before. I know those, he swallows again. God, it's the same ones from before. Somewhere behind him, the scrape returns, slower now, more deliberate, like it knows he's listening. Jensen spins, the flashlight slicing through the dark, but there's nothing. Just the long, empty hall. He exhales through his nose, shaky, trying to steady his hands. I need to get out. Just find an exit. His voice catches on the word exit. A shadow flits across the far wall. Jensen sucks in a breath. No. No, no, no. The beam shakes wildly as he stumbles backward, the camera catching flashes of his own boots, the warped floor, the oppressive ceiling pressing down. Then, click. The sound is right next to his ear. Jensen lets out a sharp, involuntary noise, not quite a scream, more like the sound you make when your body moves before your brain catches up. He swings the camera toward it, but the image tears in static, showing only fractured pieces of the hallway. I'm not looking. I'm not. His words are rushed, breathless, like if he keeps talking he might keep himself from freezing completely. You're not getting me. The hallway splits ahead, left or right. Jensen stops for half a second too long, his indecision caught in the camera's slow sway between the two. Which way? Which? Another metallic scrape, louder this time, from the right. He runs left. The image becomes a violent blur, ceiling lights, floor, wall, floor again, as his breathing turns to outright panting. He mutters under his breath, fragments of thought spilling out unfiltered. Just keep going. Don't stop. Halfway down the hall, his light flickers and catches something ahead. A door. He almost laughs, a short, disbelieving sound. There, I see it. The camera steadies for just a second as he reaches for the handle. It doesn't move. No. His voice fractures completely now, teetering between desperation and fury. He rattles the handle again, harder, the metal clanging under his grip. Come on! The scrape returns, this time from both sides of the hall. Jensen's breathing turns to small, sharp gasps. It's behind me. The light swings back down the corridor. Two white eyes hover in the dark. They blink. Jensen swears under his breath, his voice dropping so low the mic barely catches it. It found me. The camera drops for just a moment as he turns back to the door, his hands fumbling at the lock with frantic, jerking motions. The beam swings upward again, the eyes now closer, impossibly closer, as if the distance between blinks doesn't matter to it. Move. His voice is raw now, not caring about volume anymore. He throws his shoulder against the door, a dull thud reverberating through the mic. The scrape is almost at his feet. Then, a low whisper curling into his ear. Jensen. He freezes. The camera shakes, the frame tilting toward the ground as his hand slackens. His breath is in the mic, uneven, like he's holding back a sob. A final, sharp, metallic snap, and the light dies. The camera lurches violently as Jensen stumbles backward, the beam of his flashlight swinging wildly across the narrow hallway. His breath is ragged, pulled through clenched teeth, and each inhale pops faintly in the mic. The walls blur as the lens struggles to focus, catching only jittering fragments of plaster and peeling paint before the light shoots upward. The ceiling. The beam freezes on it, on something crouched in the far corner where wall meets ceiling. Its limbs splay wrong, bent like broken branches forced to grow in reverse. The head is tilted almost completely upside down, the pale, lidless eyes fixed on him. The white is too bright, too unnatural, burning against the shadows. For a moment, the camera catches a subtle, deliberate inhale, a faint, wet click somewhere between breath and insect chatter. Jensen's voice cracks. No. He steps back, nearly tripping over a loose chunk of debris. The light jerks, the ceiling vanishes from frame, and the hallway is plunged back into fractured shadows. The camera shakes so hard, the image tears, a horizontal line of static slicing through the feed. He spins toward the door at the far end. I'm out! The words are half yelled, half gasped, more like an instinctive expulsion than speech. His boots pound against the linoleum, the beam ricocheting between the walls as he runs. Every footstep seems to echo a half-beat late, except that echo is heavier, more uneven. The distortion worsens. Edges bend inward, as though the lens is being pulled toward the center of the frame. In the noise, a low, almost playful sound bleeds in. 3 deliberate taps, slow and steady, not from behind him, from above. Jensen's breath stutters. The camera swings back up just in time to catch a long, shadowed form peeling away from the ceiling. It moves without falling, without weight, until the very last second when its body drops with impossible speed. The eyes hit the light first. Then the rest of it follows, all limbs and angles folding and unfolding midair like it's rearranging itself while falling. Jensen yells, a raw, unfiltered "no" that tears his voice apart. The camera convulses in his grip as he veers hard toward the exit. The frame breaks into wild fragments. The door, the floor, a flash of his own hand, the glint of metal on the wall. The sound of pursuit is deafening now, not just footsteps but a scraping rush, like bone against concrete. A heavy thud explodes from behind, shaking the floor. The shockwave shivers through the mic. Jensen's words tumble over themselves. It's right! It's... oh God! He slams into the door, shoulder first. The impact rattles the camera so hard that the image desyncs from the sound for half a second. His free hand claws at the handle. Come on! Come on! The shadow falls over him. There's no time for another thought, no breath, no choice. The camera catches one last image in full clarity, a long, clawed hand snapping forward into the frame, each finger segmented and pale, nails catching the light for a split second before the rest of the form blots out everything. Jensen's scream is cut in half, not fading, not trailing, just severed mid-breath by the sound of a violent impact. Something hits the camera, sending it spinning out of his hands. The lens slams into the floor, tilting at a harsh angle. Static floods the feed, but through the distortion, the view locks on the scene sideways. Jensen's flashlight rolling in slow arcs, its beam strobing across the walls, the floor, the low ceiling. The shadows writhe unnaturally, coiling toward where he fell. There's a final, wet, dragging sound. Then, stillness. The light from the flashlight flickers one last time before dying completely, plunging the frame into black. For several seconds, the only sound is the faint hiss of static and something, maybe breathing, maybe interference, just beneath the noise floor. Then, even that goes silent. The camera hits the floor with a hollow metallic clatter, the sound slightly distorted by the onboard mic. The lens lands at an angle, framing the lower half of the hallway. The beam from Jensen's fallen flashlight still cuts a diagonal across the floor, shivering faintly with each vibration in the building's frame. In the upper right corner of the view, a blur of movement, Jensen's boots, sliding backward, heels scraping violently against the linoleum. His voice bursts into the audio, raw and choked, not quite a scream, but the sound of someone fighting without air. His hands flash into frame, grasping at the edge of the wall, nails dragging along the plaster in a short, desperate scrape. Then, he's gone. Dragged backward into the dark beyond the lens, vanishing as though the shadows themselves have swallowed him whole. The only sound that follows is a single muted thump, like a body hitting something soft, and then... nothing. The frame holds steady, the hallway now empty. Dust particles drift lazily through the beam of the fallen flashlight, their movement hypnotic in the sudden stillness. The mic catches the faint hiss of static, thin, fragile, like the last thread of a dying signal. Somewhere, far in the background, there's a single click. Then silence again, as if the sound was never there. The flashlight's beam grows weaker, its edges blurring. A faint pulse of static rolls across the image, bending the lines of the hallway for just a heartbeat before they settle again. There's no movement, no voice, no pursuit. Only the kind of stillness that feels too deliberate, as if the building itself is holding its breath. Seconds pass. The audio drops even lower, picking up only the faint hum of equipment somewhere unseen. Or perhaps that hum is something else entirely, hidden under the guise of white noise. The shadows at the far end of the hall seem thicker now, their edges curling unnaturally in the grain of the footage. The camera does not move. The beam flickers. Once. Twice. Then steadies, though dimmer than before. Another pulse of static sweeps the screen, slower this time. The image warps, pulling inward slightly, as if something beyond the lens is drawing the frame toward it. A faint, almost human sigh threads through the hiss, so soft it could be dismissed as interference, and then the flashlight dies. For a single heartbeat, the frame is pitch black. The hiss of static swells to fill the silence. When the image returns, it is no longer the hallway. It's black. Pure, unbroken black, the kind that feels like it has weight. And in the center, white text fades in, sharp and impossibly clean against the darkness. Project Rake. Status. Terminated. The letters hold steady. No flicker, no distortion, just the stark clarity of the words, unmoving, unyielding. The hiss of static continues beneath them, like a steady exhale. 5 seconds pass. 6. Then, faintly, there's a sound, almost like the scrape of nails along metal, hidden deep in the static. It's distant, but distinct enough that it feels intentional. The text doesn't change. It just hangs there, as if waiting. Another second. A low click, far away, almost swallowed by the noise. The text remains. Finally, the hiss begins to fade, dropping lower and lower until it's little more than a whisper. The white letters hold their place in the void until the very last trace of sound disappears. And then, without transition or warning, the screen cuts to absolute black. No credits, no music, no return of the feed. Just a final, heavy stillness. It lingers for a few beats longer than feels comfortable, as if daring the viewer to expect something more. But nothing comes.